Distinct from many first-person shooters, Witchfire presents several ARPG elements to make for more of a hunting experience, rather than one of pure combat. As I entered the first of the game's 5 regions, my initial instinct was to check the map for objectives. Indeed, a bird's-eye view of the Isle of the Damned featured skulls and treasure chests, among other icons. Skulls represent arenas of varying difficulty, whereas human skulls suggest easy or moderate challenges. Skulls with small horns or ram's horns are more difficult. Dispatch all the arena's enemies to clear the objective, earning a temporary buff for the rest of your run. Unlike Doom Eternal, Witchfire's arenas aren't chaotic and closed spaces through which to ricochet. They're only arenas insofar as they challenge the player with waves of enemies. The game is ultimately cover-based, allowing you to remain along the outskirts instead of launching yourself into the middle of the action. That's why I compare the gameplay to hunting. There's no desperate struggle to stay on the move, and survivability remains high. One of my favorite aspects of the first region is that the only overarching objectives are to familiarize yourself with core mechanics, strengthen your prayer, unlock more formidable weapon abilities, and gather resources. As the game's experience points, Witchfire is among the more important resources to collect. Return to base via the return portal, or leave your findings at a grave marker upon death. Note that if you die before reaching the most recent grave marker, your belongings will disappear permanently, as you may imagine. The inventory also shows which items you'll lose upon death, so that's a nice little quality of life measure. As frustrated as I was to die on my first run, surviving my next expedition more than compensated for the initial loss. Visit the Ascension Shrine to advance any of your 6 core stats, some of which threw me for a loop. Sure, there's flesh, which is little beyond a fancy word for the health stat, call it vigor. There's also blood, which is tantamount to dexterity or endurance, stamina stuff. When you reach mind, you might expect casting speed, but that's more like witchery. Mind is reminiscent of luck in other RPGs, increasing the amount of healing you receive, enhancing certain item drops, and increasing sanity resistance. Certain events will reveal and begin to deplete your sanity gauge. When the gauge empties, you'll lose a substantial chunk of health, but you also won't see that menacing bar more than 20% of the time. Forgetting about sanity until you absolutely need it is an easy trap in which to catch yourself. You can always either take the hit or avoid the cause in the first place. Sanity loss reminds me of bleeding in other RPGs, except it's happening in your brain, so you should probably have that checked out. After Mind and Witchery comes Arsenal, which is likely a popular core stat due to its governance of marksmanship and general performance with weapons. If you want quicker weapon swaps, shorter reload times, more capacious magazines, and greater weapon range, Arsenal is your friend. Finally, there's Faith, which is a jacked up form of luck in comparison to Mind, improving different types of drops, increasing the chance for divine intervention, a random chance to negate any harmful effect at any time, and governs Blessed Aim, a chance to score a critical hit without landing a headshot. The game will also alert you when divine intervention activates, so you can be sure the Lord is watching you, my child. As the core stat of the class recommended for beginners by the development team, Faith is a solid investment for any prayer. Ultimately, classes are similar to classes in Dark Souls, in the sense that they have a negligible impact at later levels. Whichever stat becomes your primary, my favorite characteristic of progression is that no stat improves base damage, so you have to use your brain instead of ChatGPT for once in your life. But let's talk about damage. Expect access to weapons from more conventional first-person shooters, including machine pistols, shotguns, sniper rifles, and hand cannons. You can procure most weapons by sending gold to the Vatican through a magic floating mirror and receiving armaments from brilliant inventors who can craft machine guns centuries ahead of schedule. Some weapons hide in the odd level, but most will be delivered by Mel Gibson because he thinks the demons are Jewish. Equip any 2 weapons at a time, sidearms or otherwise. I carry a shotgun and sniper rifle myself because I picked the Slayer class, which prizes short range and melee combat, but because the combat is almost entirely cover-based, no class gets very far without a carbine, sniper rifle, or automatic rifle. I found a sniper rifle to be particularly non-negotiable for Scarlet Coast's boss, as well as clapping wardens before they call their friends. After adventuring through the first 2 regions or so, you'll unlock a 3rd weapon slot for the 3-fold demonic weapons. Equip a stun gun, crossbow, or noob tube. It wasn't a hard choice for me. Conventional ammo is scarce in the world of Witchfire, so carrying a demonic weapon is prudent regardless of whether you use it. The slot will stay open anyway. Beyond weapons, you can equip a light spell, a heavy spell, and 3 passives, excluding any prayer beads you might find. Mostly offensive relics, mostly defensive fetishes, and rings, which bolster dashes with further abilities. My favorite relic is Scourge, which docks fatal damage from the stamina bar instead. I combine this with my favorite fetish, the Mandrake, which prevents fatal damage once per expedition, immediately recovering health and granting temporary immunity. Think Tears of Denial from Dark Souls 3. Weakened by substantial cooldowns, spells also play more of a support role. After all, you already have 3 guns. One of the heavy spells I found most useful is the Cursed Bell. When you summon it, it stuns all lesser enemies nearby, but it remains in the scene for about a minute, allowing you to re-trigger the effect by shooting it. Much later in the game, you'll earn access to customization options called prophecies, which influence and bolster the temporary buffs you receive from completing arenas. You can equip one that ensures a temporary buff will relate to weapons, pick another that ensures a buff will relate to elemental damage, whatever. I hesitate to describe the final piece of customization because it was something I didn't find useful, but maybe you will. You can make different types of incense with ingredients from across the 5 regions, but the effects are peripheral, and these ingredients don't drop from enemies. You have to go out of your way to identify and gather the right plants. I probably enjoyed the most mileage out of the restoration incense, which is easy to make and slowly regenerates health to 30% if it sinks any lower. Despite minute customization in terms of weapons and abilities, no prayer can look like anything other than a very angry pilgrim. We pilgrims don't like Catholicism because it's Christianity plus Romans, and we don't like Romans or any other people for that matter because we are racist. That's why Mel Gibson is handing us magic weapons. So what's a day in the life like for these genocidal pilgrims? Witchfire presents an alternate history in which powerful witches have seized control of most land, forcing humans into the few havens remaining across Europe. As immortal servants of the Pope, prayers are responsible for neutralizing these formidable threats and making the world safe for humans once more. That's basically the entire narrative. The rest is level design and bosses. Not to relinquish too much information, but what I admire most about each region is that there's always some feature that makes a region fundamentally different from the other 4. For example, in Scarlet Coast, you have to clear all arenas to summon the boss, but in Velmorn, you have to gain access to the sewer and seek the boss there. An additional source of entropy in all regions is your calamity level. During a run, each time you fall into one of the witch's traps or endure an unusually gnarly direct hit, you'll gain an eyeball. Earning 5 eyeballs indicates to the witch that you've become an obvious enough threat for her to trigger a calamity, a particularly difficult challenge that you must complete in order to stop enemies from swarming the level. Certainly, this mechanic is similar to the star system in Grand Theft Auto. I didn't expect rogue elements to play so nicely with mostly static areas, but by making levels unique, keeping shortcuts from previous runs open, and hiding certain areas behind illusory walls, the development team has delicately crafted these regions into dynamic, breathing dungeons. Delivering a genuinely compelling boss in a first-person context is no easy task, but bosses aren't the focus of Witchfire anyway. Apart from the witch herself, there are only 3 familiars, 1 boss for the 2nd through 4th regions. They're a little spammy, insofar as they have lots of health, serving mainly as indicators that you're about to gain access to the next region. If not bosses themselves, what actually ushers you to the end of a game whose levels you can play interminably? The main indicators of where you are in the campaign are twofold: Gnosis levels and regional charts. Distinct from character levels, Gnosis levels rise only to 6, though there may be extra levels as the game phases out of early access. At higher Gnosis levels, you can access further regions, dispel more potent illusory walls, and access different types of gear. When I reached the 6th Gnosis level, my fervor for Jesus became so powerful that these books just started floating around. To increase your Gnosis level, you must achieve a few major feats, like killing one of the familiars or carrying a certain amount of Witchfire. Note that in response to your promotion, the witch will increase her defenses in all regions, placing more traps and summoning stronger enemies. Of course, you also have to find the regional chart to progress to new areas. You can find these bad boys near or behind bosses, so when in doubt, kill the boss. Everything else should fall into place with regard to actual objectives and the true prize, the witch. As Witchfire remains in early access, the Witch of Witch Mountain is actually not available yet, which is kind of surprising since everything else is complete. Maybe the final boss changes based on the decisions and build of the player. Nevertheless, you can still access the region in which to find her. Witchfire may not be fully available at the time of recording, but it's on its way, and it has already done an excellent job of combining FPS with elements from ARPGs. Personally, I can't wait to defeat the witch and make my prayer stronger than ever, level 94 and counting. If you're still on the fence about Witchfire, it's sort of like Doom meets Bloodborne, but you might also regard it as a fun version of Deathloop. Maybe you enjoy Deathloop, in which case Witchfire is a similar concept, and you'll get a kick out of it too.